we're Just Got Played, and we are gaming through mechanisms. So what does that mean? We like to talk about card games, board games, and the way that you interact with those games. We call those mechanisms. So we like to put things in little categories so we can talk about how different things relate to each other. We're doing that today. We're talking about Roll and Move, which is a classic that you have probably played roll and move games when you were growing up, Monopoly and things like that. But bear with us, because we're going to share with you our favorite good roll and move games. And we're going to tell you what were the people's choices that were voted on in our fan polls. All right. So I am going to turn this video over to Erock to MC.
Indeed. Roll and move. So I'm going to do my tangent now. We'll just get it out of the way. So when we decided to do this category, I thought, wow, roll and move. And I thought back to being a kid. And at that time, if you just said you want to play a game, I would have taken it as for granted, as a given, that it was going to be a roll and move game. It just absolutely dominated board games 30, 40 years ago. And at this point, it's almost like a forgotten mechanism. Unlike a lot of the other categories we've had, I didn't have like 12 things that immediately popped to mind. I was like, wow, roll and move. Man, really? And it took a little bit of research. Now, there are some games out there, which you're going to see because we're going to talk about them. It just amazed me when I thought about it, how a mechanism that absolutely dominated the hobby has just gone kind of by the wayside at this point. But let's talk about some good games that use that mechanism. Steven, why don't you start us off? What is your favorite roll and move game?
Oh, good. I'm glad I get to go first because I've got a roll and move game that is super simple. I mean, you roll a die and you move your car. But it is not like Monopoly or something, or even those other kids games where it's roll and move and you have absolutely no agency, right?
Like Chutes and Ladders.
Your piece or whatever. Yeah. This one, you have decisions to make, and this is Formula D. So what's really cool about this game is you choose what gear you're in, and depending on what gear you're in, you roll a different die. And so the higher gears, you will get to move further. You might roll the die might have 30 sides with numbers going from 21 to 30. And so you're going to move some huge number of spaces if you roll that die. But the problem is on the track, there are these corners and you have to slow down for these corners. Otherwise, you're going to damage or blow up your vehicle. And so you have to make these interesting decisions about, all right, am I going to slow down here? Am I going to gear down here? Gearing down is bad because you can gear down as much as you want, maybe take a little bit of damage, but gearing up is a sort of a slow process. You can only go up one gear each turn. So you want to gear down as little as possible to get in the corner just at the right time, at the right speed to come out of it super fast. So you have this pretty interesting decision space. It's a small space. What gear am I in? What die am I going to roll? And in the game, people really need to be actively engaged in the game when it's not their turn. They need to be thinking about, well, how many spaces to this corner? How many spaces to this? So that when it is their turn, they can just decide, okay, shift, roll die, go, next person. Because when you play the game like that, the game goes really fast. It's a lot of fun because everybody's engaged in what everybody else is doing, right? Like, what did you roll on your turn? Where did that put you? Are you in my way? Did you take damage? I'm going to be able to catch you, et cetera. So I also like that this game plays a lot of players. Out of the box, it plays up to 10 players. I actually added a couple more to my box, so we'll play this at 12 even. So it's good at higher player counts if you keep it moving. And I would say actually it's probably better at higher player counts because more cars on the track. I mean, you can play 2 cars per person if you have less players, but I think more cars on the track is a little bit more interesting decisions, more interesting things going on. You could definitely have a game of this. I mean, we played a game of this where one guy just nailed every single corner. He just got lucky on every die roll and he was just gone. And the rest of us were just playing for second. That's all right. We were playing for second. Fine. And the way you win this game is your car on fire with just a little bit of damage left, limping across the line. And I'm going to digress on that point because this is an F1 style game. But did you see the news article about the guy in the NASCAR race the other day? He he needed to finish in the top whatever to qualify maybe for the final tournament they do at the end of the season. And he, in the last lap, it was one of the short tracks where they all slow down and go tight in the corners. He did this thing that he learned playing NASCAR on the GameCube. He just went as fast as he could and rammed up against the wall and had the wall drag him around at the fastest speed he could go. And he passed 5 cars and finished in a position so that he could qualify. I mean, he totally ruined his car, but so what? They qualified for the playoffs. And in there in the interview, he's like, yeah, I did that on the GameCube when I was a kid. Figured I'd give it a shot. So anyway, but that's how you finish this game, on fire, parts falling off your car, limping across the finish line. I mean, you're either in first or you're blown up in your last, right? A little Bobby there, but
indeed, yes.
Yeah. So I love Formula D, and just spoiler alert, I'm throwing it out right now. The people love Formula D. That is also their number 1 pick.
Oh, there you go. Good for you, Steve. Okay, excellent. So, babe, what is your first choice for roll and move?
All right. My first choice for roll and move, it didn't immediately come to mind. To be honest, you had to tell me that a lot of games that were roll and move, because I was like, I don't think we play these anymore. But so the very first one that I kind of grabbed onto and I said, I'm going to have to talk about that is Xia. So Xia is a sci-fi sandbox game where you can do whatever you want to get the points that you want to get in this game. And you can be aggressive, you could be passive, you could do pick up and deliver, you just do whatever you want. But the engines on your ship are determine the dice that you roll for your movement through space. And so it is a roll and move. So my top pick for roll and move is Xia.
Excellent.
That's interesting because along those same lines, I didn't really think of it at the time, but I saw on the list, Merchant of Venus is also a roll and move. Another spaceship game where you're moving around the map based on a diagram.
Yep.
Excellent. Yeah, I love Xia too, babe. We have a lot of fun playing that game. You can play it however long you want to. It's almost like Tales of the Arabian Nights, if you've ever played that. You just sit down and say, well, what do you want to play to today? And that's what you play to. Short game, medium game, long game. And yeah, you get points doing everything. Whatever you do. If you roll a 20, you get a fame point. So it's points galore, everything you do. Just do whatever makes you happy and have fun. So I am going to kind of half take credit for that also, because that's my number 1 game, but I'm not going to talk about that because Babe talked about that and I tagged along. So my first choice for a roll and move game is Jamaica. Jamaica is a pirate race game. And what makes this game cool is whoever the captain is rolls the 2 dice. All right. And it's basically 2 6-sided dice. All right. And everybody chooses how they're going to use, what cards they're going to use, what card they're going to use for these dice that are rolled. And then the captain decides which is going to be the day one and which is going to be the night one. And that's going to determine a lot of things, like how far you move, or when you gather things, how much you gather, and things like that. So it's a little bit different than your traditional roll and move because everybody's moving off the same dice. It's just that you might not choose to move. If I rolled a 5 and a 6, you might gather stuff twice, and that's fine. That's what you did. I might move twice on that. But the point is that the dice are rolled and you choose what you do after that. And so I think it's a really cool, like I said, it's a pirate race game. You're basically racing around the island of Jamaica. And usually the person that makes it around first wins, but there are points for other things. And I'm just going to throw it out there. The expansion for this is fantastic. It really adds a layer to this game in a very seamless way where it's almost obvious now that layer should have been, but you didn't notice it before. Because before, when you went to port and you paid money. That was it. Now with the expansion, you go to port, you pay money, and you get a crewmate. And they do really cool things. And one of the things is, if you get all of a set of them, I think, you just win the game. So that's cool. So So I guess one of the only ways that it's really not going to be the person that won, And like I said, just because you win the race doesn't mean you win the game, but usually you do, just because that's the way the points go. But I really like this game. We've had a lot of fun playing it. You end up in a lot of accidental battles because you don't know what anybody's going to do. Everybody chooses their cards at the same time, and then you go in sequential order. So it's entirely possible that me and Babe could move into the same spot. Now we're going to fight, or I might move backwards. There's cards that move you backwards. So I might move backwards where she's at. Now we're going to fight. So you end up with all these accidental fights. And basically, you don't destroy anybody. You just take something out of their hold when you win, basically. So, but that could screw somebody up badly because you also need to feed your people as your crew as you're going around the island. So if I get in a fight with Babe and lose, she takes all my food. Now I'm in trouble when I got to feed my people. I don't have it. And when you don't have the thing that you need in this game, you move backwards. And now you might get in a fight because you move backwards into somebody else. It's really cool. It plays up to 6, I believe. And I highly recommend playing this with as many people as you can because it is the accidental interactions that make this game the joy that it is to play. And that's my first pick is Jamaica, even though it's really Zaya.
Yeah, I love that you picked Jamaica, though, because, far and away from me, my first pick was Formula D. But then I had a short list of 3 games, and I didn't pick it, but Jamaica was one of those 3 games.
Awesome. Okay. Did I get everybody? I feel like Lloyd. I skipped Lloyd. Lloyd, what is your first pick for Roll and Move?
So, my games, well, both of them are going to be older, but not like from when I was a kid. Well, one of them's from when I was a kid, but it's getting remade. We'll save that one for later. However, the first one I'm going to pick, we dubbed it as Pirate Monopoly. It was an Avalon Hill game, and it was called Sword and Skull. And essentially what this is Monopoly with fighting. The way the game works, you have a similar board, right? You have spaces along the outside, but then you have a path through the middle. And at the end of that path, you can either come out the other end or you can detour to fight the Pirate King or bribe the Pirate King. And that's how you ultimately win the game. What you're doing is you have 2 different characters in the game. You have a pirate and you have a naval captain. They start slightly offset from each other, but in the same general position. And you roll 2 dice. Whenever you roll the 2 dice, you decide which guy you're going to move. So you move either the naval captain or you move the pirate. If you roll doubles, you move both of them that amount. On the board are spaces where you can get other crewmates or get weapons. And essentially what you're trying to do is there's 2 ways to win. Like I said, you can either fight the Pirate King and defeat him using your weapons, your swords and stuff. Or you can try to amass enough money to just pay him off to go away. So how you do it is going around the board, there's certain spaces that'll give you swords and there's certain spaces that'll give you guns. And the guns are for the pirates and the swords are for the naval people. So you can choose to build up either one of those guys, or you can just kind of pool your resources and try to get enough money by getting certain spaces that will give you money when people land on them, a la Monopoly. I don't think I've ever seen... We played it a lot. And the reason I'm picking is we played it a lot with the kids because I couldn't be bothered to play like Sorry and Monopoly and stuff. So I tried to find similar things. But this one we played a lot, and it was really hard to win with money because the amount of money you needed made you a target, and it really a lot of the cards punished you for having the most money. But I guess it was doable if everything went right for you. But there is fighting. So if you land on certain spaces on the board, there's a little deck of cards that have monsters in them. And if you land on those spaces, you don't choose. You have to fight the monster that's there. So you pull a card and you can try to fight the monster. And if you win by a certain amount, you get certain treasures that, you get like guns and whatever things that give you more might or money or whatever. I believe there's like a little auction block as well. So you pull up in there and then a bunch of cards come out and people can try to buy them. And you can also fight each other. So if you pop up on a spot with someone else, you go into a fight. And when you fight, you take money from them, or you take their items, or if they don't even have that, I think you can steal crew from them. But it is essentially, like I said, it's like Pirate Monopoly. It looks exactly the same. You're kind of doing the same thing. The choice being that you roll your dice and then you look at your two characters and decide which one's the best one to move, unless you roll doubles and then you're just moving them both. And I like the fact that there is a lot of player interaction. It's not just landing on a space. Like, you choose to go land on someone's pirate because you have more guns than them and you can just beat them up. So it is a little bit mean. But it's not passive aggressive mean like Monopoly. It's like, I'm coming for you. So we're gonna fight. So that was my first pick. I'm pretty sure it's probably not in print anymore. It's an old Avalon Hill game from like the early 2000s, maybe. I didn't look up the date, but I used to have it. I got rid of it in one of my purges because it was Monopoly. It was Monopoly. Monopoly was fighting.
Indeed. Awesome. Well, I don't think I've ever played that. I have heard of it, though. So I was kind of hoping you had one because I'd like to see it. I have to go search for one now, I guess. Anyway, that'll round out our first order of selections, and we'll pop right in. And I'm going right back to Steven. Steven, what is your second choice for roll and move?
All right. So, with my first pick, I picked a game where you roll and then you move your piece. For my second game, though, I'm going to pick something that's a little bit different, because you roll the die and then you decide what piece you want to move. Kind of like Lloyd was just talking about.
Yeah.
So, but in this case, you are moving a racehorse. So my pick is Winner Circle. So Winner Circle, a game that I continuously taunt Erock with, is a Kinesia game. And Kinesia really knows, he is a doctorate in math, right? So he knows his math. So it's all balanced in that there are obviously 6 sides to the die, and 3 of them are horse heads. And then there's the 3 other symbols, like the saddle and the horseshoe and my riding crop, maybe, or a helmet or something. I can't remember exactly what they are, but each horse, depending on what you've rolled, when you decide to move that horse, will move a different amount, right? And so the horse head obviously is more common, but most horses don't move as far with the horse head. So if you're going to move a horse a lot with the horse head, it'll need to be picked a bunch, but it might have a decent number there and then weak on the other numbers, The trick is, though, that once you move a horse, it can't move again until all the other horses have moved. And then now all the horses are available to move again. So on your turn, you can roll a die and you have bet on some specific horses to win the race. So you might be like, well, I just rolled, the saddle, and the saddle isn't really very good for any of the horses that I want to win. But look at this horse that's out front. It only moves 1 space with the saddle, and I'm not on that horse. Well, I'm just going to use the saddle to move that horse 1. So now I've screwed everybody who's bet on that horse. It's going to slow it down and let all my other horses catch up. So there's that interesting decision where you roll the die, but what horse am I going to move? And that's what really makes this game fun. It's balanced mathematically, and you roll the dice a lot, so you're going to get some predictable behavior, but also just sort of the way that people choose to interact with the game is what brings the chaos, rather than the chaos being from the dice rolling. So, that's one of the reasons I like this game, and one of the reasons why I think it's one of the better roll and move games, even though it doesn't feel so much like a roll and move game. It is roll and move. There you go. Winner's Circle.
Yes, and thank you for once again taunting me with that game. And
welcome.
Just like always when you mention it, I went to Dice Tree Games and checked, and it still says will be reprinted in Q4 of 2022.
We're gonna we're gonna live stream this, man. We're gonna live stream the game of this.
Oh yes, there's some Winner Circle, the big chunky horses that look awesome. Yes. All right. Excellent. Okay, so we're going to go. Let's go same rotation. We'll go back to Babe. Babe, what is your second choice for a roll and move?
So I am a really big fan of Flying Frog games. I fell in love with them early on in my introduction to board games. My reintroduction to board games, I guess I should say. And they are just cheesy and silly, and they are everything that I want in a game. And so they had a lot of options to choose from for roll and move because a lot of Flying Frog are roll and move games. But I have to go with my very favorite Flying Frog game of all time, which was one of my favorites early on because I could play a teacher and I was a teacher in real life, and she could go to the house and she could get books, and the more books she got, the stronger she became. And I just loved that. And so it became like my favorite game of all time. That's Last Night on Earth. So Last Night on Earth, you are a group of people that are trying to save the world from pending doom. And you are trying to go through the town and get the artifacts that you need in order to be able to confront the big baddie that's trying to take over the town. So it's pretty straightforward, but you roll and move throughout the town in order to visit different places, to take different actions, or to search for different items that you're going to need during the game. So yeah, Last Night on Earth was my second, but really my first roll and move pick.
Indeed. We actually played this really close to when we played Arkham Horror, the card game. And I was struck at how similar these two games are, actually. I think it's probably more similar to Arkham Horror, the board game, than the card game as far as it goes. But it's really the same thing. It's, as you described it, you could have been describing Arkham Horror. Right. You go around through the town and you try to get all the things that you need to defeat the baddie at the end. It just had different mechanisms going on in it than Arkham Horror, and especially Arkham Horror, the card game, which is a little bit different than all of that. But yeah, it's an enjoyable game. And as Babe says, she does love the frying frog? No, the frying frog.
Flying frog. Flying frog.
The flying frog, yes.
There you go.
All right, so keeping with our established convention, I will go next. So being that Zaya was really my first choice and Jamaica was really my second choice, so I talked about Jamaica, I'm going to throw in a wild card here. And I am going back to my childhood. I'm going with Clue. I love Clue. I don't care. You know what? Honestly, there are better games now. There are better deduction games now. But I love Clue. This has a special place in my heart. So obviously, here I am talking about board games. I'm obviously into board games, okay? But I've always been into board games. When I was a kid, I was a pain in the butt. No matter what was going on, I always wanted to play a game. Always wanted to play a game. And Clue was one of those. I, saw one of those cheesy commercials on TV, and I got Clue one year, and just made everybody play it. And Clue was the first game I ever owned where after we played and I went to bed, my adult family stayed up and continued to play Clue because it's so much fun. And I was always jealous. Be like, all right, bedtime. I'm like, no, I knew you're going to keep playing. I want to keep playing. Oh, I just love Clue. It's probably really hard to say whether it was this or Scotland Yard that was my first deduction game. I love them both very much. I love the deduction genre. I like Clue a lot. I like that you write down, you got a little pad and you mark things off. And the roll and move is absolutely the worst part of this game, by far. Because it could take you 3 turns to go from one room to the next room. And you have to be in a room to make an accusation. And the really messed up part is if somebody accuses you, it takes you to where they are. So I could finally I'm getting out of the conservatory and then Tiffany's like, I think it was Mr. Plum. And I'm like, oh no, and drags me all the way back. And I've already gone through this room. I don't have anything else to ask. And then you start rolling the dice and I rolled a 2 again. It's going to take me forever to get out of here. And then Steven walks in the conservatory and says, oh, I think it's Mr. Plum. And I'm like, no, not me again. I just got out of here again. But I don't care. I love Clue. It's so much fun.
I think the most popular variant of this game removes the roll and move from the game. But I'm with you. I really like Clue. I mean, my first published game design was inspired by Clue quite clearly. And also Clue was neck and neck jockeying for the number 2 spot, but just missed out in the People's Choice poll. So still a popular game, not just among us, but among our entire viewer audience as well.
Indeed. Well, that's good to hear. And, probably the greatest thing about it is you can really play it with anybody. It does not take very long to explain that game, and everybody can play. Grandmas, grandfathers, little boys, little girls, people that hardly speak your language can probably play Clue. So anyway, that's my second choice, which was actually my third choice. So kind of my wild card choice. So let's round out the second round with Lloyd. Lloyd, what is your actual second choice?
Okay, so my second choice, I'm going to go back. Maybe not. It's clearly not as far as that, but it's back to my childhood. However, it's a game that I forgot that I had. Didn't remember it existed until I was at Gen Con and I saw someone with a blinged out copy of it. And I was like, I had that as a kid. I have to find it again, which I did. I did purchase a copy on eBay. It was only missing some dice, which dice nowadays. I got like 8,000 of them laying around the house. But that is Thunder Road.
Okay.
And this is the one I said they're doing a remake because Restoration Games did the Kickstarter earlier this year. And it should be delivering, I think, early January, February. I don't know. They keep sending updates. I don't know. Sometime next year, end of this year, whatever. It's coming. And they kept the roll and move, but to update it, they also added the cards so you can have card play, so you have a little bit more agency on what you're doing. But we're going to talk about the classic one. And in that one, you essentially have 3 cars, helicopter, and there are 2 boards. The boards have some road spaces on them. And then there's also on the sides, there's some dirt road spaces. And this is either a race game or a destruction game. And if you're playing it as a race game, you are wrong. It is a destruction game. Think of Mad Max. They're basically, you have 3 cars. They're in 3 different sizes. There's a big 6-wheel car that's got like a spiked bumper on the front and guns. And there's a medium-sized car that looks kind of exactly like the car from Road Warriors. The V8 Interceptor looks basically like the same thing. And then there's the little car, the little dune buggy. And those factor in when you're ramming and attacking and stuff, their sizes. But essentially, you roll 3 dice. On every turn, you're going to move all 3 of your cars. You roll your dice, and then you assign a die to each one of the cars to move them and try to destroy everyone else. Who cares about racing? I mean, you can do that. There's a mechanic or a mechanism to, like, if you get to the end of the board, because it's just 2 boards. If you get to the end and have to move on to the spot where there would be no more board, you basically pick up the last board and whatever's on there gets dumped in the garbage and you put it out in front so the road keeps going. And you can win that way, but that's the coward's way to win. That's
more thunder, less road.
Yeah. If you're playing that way, you're playing wrong, just running from everybody. And there is some like strategy to being on the road or being in the dirt. If you're in the dirt, you're going to move slower, so you get less rolls. And deciding when to attack with which car also plays into it. And using your helicopter. But yeah, that was my pick. And again, it was one that I forgot I had as a kid. Just kind of blanked out with all the other Mad Max stuff I had. I actually had a bunch of toys that were Mad Max themed, but they weren't Mad Max. And I forgot I had those. And then I started looking. I was like, oh, that thing existed. So it all is in like this Mad Max portion of my brain. It's all just mixed together. But yeah, I saw it at that show and I was like, oh, this is crazy. I had that. I'm going to get it. And I started looking on eBay and they're, outrageous prices, even for incomplete ones. But I got one for like a fairly reasonable. I mean, it's not reasonable for what it is. It was reasonable for like what I consider paying for other games. It was like $45. But I'm like, I pay you that for most new games. And I've played it a few times. I had to glue one of the helicopters back on, like the rotor or whatever. Who cares? I got the new one coming anyway, but I had to get it. I did an unboxing for it because I was so excited. I did an unboxing for the channel. And look at this old game. It's so great. So that was my other pick. And yeah,
awesome.
like I said, I'm anxiously waiting for the new one to come out because I did the all in. I wanted it.
Something to look forward to. Yeah. Excellent. Okay, so that did round us all out on our second round of choices, which only leaves your choices, the people's choices. So, Stephen, why don't you tell us what the people chose?
So, as I mentioned already, Formula D was far and away number one. I do want to mention, though, there's another game which didn't come in second, and I didn't expect it to, but I threw it in the poll anyway. But what I was surprised at is that it got 0 votes, and that is backgammon, which I think is a really good roll and move game, but no love from the people.
I would have never thought of that.
Yeah, but it was in the poll. People could have seen it and voted for it, but no. That's okay, because I told you for my second pick, I had a short list of 3 games. I chose Winner's Circle over Jamaica, and I'm happy to say the people chose the other game that was on my short list, which is Camel Up.
Okay.
Now there is a second edition of Camel Up, also, by the way, which incorporates some of the pieces from the Super Cup expansion to Camel Up. But in Camel Up, again, this is a gambling game, a game where you're betting on camels. So sort of like I was talking about betting on horses, this is betting on camels. So you can decide on your turn. There's a limited number of things you can do. One of the things you can do is you can say, I think this camel is going to win the race, or this camel is going to lose the race, or I think this camel is going to finish in this position in this leg of the race, because those legs are scored individually, or whatever. And the interesting thing about how the camels move is when they land on each other, they will stack up. So then what the one below moves, it will carry the ones that are on top of it. And then the things can split the camels up as well. Things can cause them to go backwards. And so you get all this sort of chaos about how things move. But one of the things that you can choose to do on your turn, in fact, you're incentivized to do it. It gives you a point, a money, I guess, which is a victory point, is you can roll a die out of the pyramid. So the game comes, in the first one, it's a cardboard pyramid that you have to assemble. In the second edition, it's a plastic pyramid. And there's a die for each camel in that pyramid. And so you just shake it up and you turn it upside down and you press the thing and a die comes out. And you move that camel that number of spaces. And, depending on how those dice come out in what order and what number really greatly changes the landscape, right? And so, you could do just one die and now everybody's sort of like wanting to bet on things or grab things, and then another die and that sort of changes it up and people grabbing stuff again. Or it could just be a sequence of die roll, die roll, die roll, essentially. So it's sort of interesting because you don't make any. It's not like you make a decision about the rolling. You decide that I'm going to roll, but you don't know what camel you're going to move, right? So you just do it. You roll by using the pyramid, and then you move a camel. And there you go. It can play up to a lot of players. I think with the expansion, it's 8.
That sounds right.
The second edition is probably only like 6 players. I can't remember, but still, either way, it's a lot of people, and you're. The turns are pretty quick, so you're, involved in the game. So, it almost falls in that party game category. Any sort of gambling inspired game really kind of falls into that sort of party category. Everybody's just sort of having fun, cheering on their thing and rooting against other people's other things, So, Camel Up, not maybe one you would think of necessarily for roll and move, because you think, well, that's a betting game, right? But absolutely, you roll the die and move the camels, and that is the meat of the game. That's what you're gambling on. So there you go.
Excellent. Well, I think that we have proven that there are a good number of good roll and move games out there, something that probably surprised even us as we were making these lists, but it harkens back to childhood. There's just something nostalgic about a roll and move game, and putting it in something modern, effectively, and fun is a triumph, in my opinion. So I want to thank people that are designing these games because they're a lot of fun to play. I want to thank you for coming and joining us for this discussion. As you probably know by now, I am Eric. I am here with my babe Tiff. We have the Lloyd and we have the Steven. And all together, we are Just Got Played. And we want to thank you so much for joining us. If you enjoyed us, give us a thumb, subscribe. We're going to have a link down here to our Discord channel. Come and talk to us. Come and talk about games. Come and talk about off-topic things. We have our polls in here. Vote on our polls for our next ones. Give us ideas for some of these other categories and mechanisms you'd like to see videos done for, and we'll be happy to do them. That's really all we want to do is just keep telling us stuff to do, and we'll keep filming it. So that's us. Just Got Played. Thanks a lot, y'all. You'll have a great night. Stop recording.